Nixon's the one. That's the natural banner for any sprightly front page tonight. At almost midday Eastern Time, NBC News projected Richard Nixon, the 37th President of the United States, when it became evident he had carried Illinois. Final returns may well reveal that indeed it was Mayor Richard Daley's Illinois and Mayor Richard Daley's Chicago which averted a deadlock and a political constitutional crisis of incredible proportions. 94% of the popular vote is counted. There are the numbers. An hour or so ago, I carried the percentages out to 6 digits, and it went like this. Nixon, 43.2959%. Humphrey, 43.2584%. Wallace, 13.4457, and now it's gone a little over 14. In short, Nixon and Humphrey are separated by about 375 thousandths of 1%. The electoral vote shows Nixon with 287, Humphrey with 166, and Wallace with 45. David?
As it turned out, in the late, tired hours of last night or the early, tired hours of this morning, Richard Nixon won the election this time where 8 years ago he lost it in Illinois. It was so close it took forever, but he won it. And in winning that, he won the presidency. It was, again, one of the closest elections in American history. Closer even than when Nixon lost to Kennedy 8 years ago. His lead over Humphrey in the popular vote is still only about 25,000 votes, or about 1/5 of a vote per precinct. There are states where we still don't know, even now, for certain, who won. But whichever way these states go now, they can't change the outcome. Here, the figures up to this minute are some of the big, important states that kept Nixon, Humphrey, and the country waiting all night to see what happened, beginning with New York. There's the result. Humphrey won it. In Michigan, Humphrey won it. In Ohio, Nixon. California, Nixon won it, but barely. Texas. Still not sure in Texas. In Missouri, they're still not sure. It's too close. Pennsylvania went to Humphrey. Took a long time to decide it, but it went. And Illinois for Nixon, and that did it.
The Huntley-Brinkley Report is produced by NBC News and brought to you in color by new Vicks NyQuil, the great new nighttime cold medicine. NyQuil relieves your major cold symptoms so well, it even helps you get the rest you need.
Richard Nixon watched election returns from a suite in a New York hotel. Key campaign aides were with him. He watched until assured he had won, slept briefly, visited his family in their nearby suite, waited for word from Humphrey, and then, shortly after noon, went to the hotel ballroom where a crowd of newsmen and several hundred party workers had waited.
Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't realize so many of you would stay up so late. I want to express first my grateful appreciation to all of those in this room, but more than that, through the medium of television and radio, the thousands, and I understand millions across the country who worked for our cause. I, as you probably have heard, have received a very gracious message from the Vice President congratulating me for winning the election. I have also had a telephone conversation with him, and I thought I might share with you and also our television audience some of the thoughts that I expressed to him in that telephone conversation. I congratulated him for his gallant and courageous fight against great odds. I admire a fighter, and he proved himself to be one. He never gave up, and he gave us a good fight. I also told him that as he finished this campaign, that I know exactly how he felt. I know how it feels to lose a close one. Having lost a close one 8 years ago and having won a close one this year, I can say this: winning's a lot more fun. But I would like to express to him and also to the thousands that work for him, because he, like myself, had a great corps of volunteer workers, many young people as well as others, a bit of philosophy that has guided me through the years of defeat toward this victory, and it is this: a great philosophy is never won without defeat. It is always won without fear. What is important is that a man or a woman engage in the battle, be in the arena, participate. And I hope that all of those that supported Mr. Humphrey and will continue their interest in politics. They will perhaps be in the other party. We may be contesting again, who knows. But the important thing is that our process in this country works better when we have devoted, dedicated people giving their all in battle for a cause that they believe in. And I would urge particularly the young people who supported him and lost not to be discouraged, but to continue their interest and to go on to other areas of public service. I saw many signs in this campaign. Some of them were not friendly. Some were very friendly. But the one that touched me the most was one that I saw in Deshler, Ohio, at the end of a long day of whistle stopping. A little town, I suppose 5 times the population was there in the dusk. It was almost impossible to see, but a teenager held up a sign, "Bring us together." And that will be the great objective of this administration at the outset, to bring the American people together. This will be an open administration, open to new ideas, open to men and women of both parties, open to the critics as well as those who support us. We want to bridge the generation gap. We want to bridge the gap between the races. We want to bring America together. And I am confident that this task is one that we can undertake and one in which we will be successful. Now, I think all of you probably wondered how I felt about winning the election, and naturally in my press conferences I always gave the appearance of complete optimism. We were going to win. That is what you have to say. But I want all of you to know that there are moments when we have doubts. And all of us had doubts, but there was one member of our family, I learned, that had no doubts at all. Because immediately after we saw the final return this morning at 9:30 or so on television, that the Illinois votes were now considered to be in our column, my daughter Julie asked me to come into her room, that she had a present for me that she had made and worked on all the time during these trips that she was taking across the country. And when you see this present, you will see she never had any doubt at all. Here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, to show you how unsophisticated I am about this kind of art, when I saw it, I said, "Isn't that needlepoint?" And she said, "No, it's crewel." But it's the kindest thing that I've had happen, even though it's cruel. Thank you.
President Johnson sent Nixon a congratulatory telegram praising him for perseverance and determination and promising to help him in any way he can. The president also sent a telegram to Humphrey congratulating him on a brave, enlightened, and vigorous campaign. Nixon set out this afternoon for a few days' rest at Key Biscayne, Florida, and on the way there he planned to visit former President Eisenhower at Walter Reed Army Medical Center near Washington.
Nixon declined to claim victory, even though it was his, until Humphrey had conceded, and a little afternoon today, Humphrey did, with tears in his eyes. He was gracious about it, and so was Nixon, and so were President Johnson and Senator Muskie and Governor Agnew, and so were Wallace and LeMay. Humphrey was in Minneapolis, and here's a report from contributing editor Jack Perkins.
Last night, Hubert Humphrey came to this ballroom and said, "You know me, I'm always optimistic. Things will look better in the morning." And in the morning, California was gone, and Illinois was gone, and the election was gone, and Hubert Humphrey returned to the ballroom. Other members of the Humphrey family, Secretary Freeman and his wife, joining the Vice President on the platform.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to know. I'm sure you know that I have already called Mr. Nixon, expressed to him our congratulations. And I've sent the following telegram just a few moments ago to Mr. Nixon. It reads as follows: "According to unofficial returns, you are the winner in this election. My congratulations. Please know that you will have my support in unifying and leading the nation. This has been a difficult year for the American people. I am confident that if constructive leaders of both our parties join together now, we shall be able to go on with the business of building the better America we all seek in a spirit of peace and harmony." Signed, Hubert H. Humphrey. Now let me say just another word. Senator Muskie and I wish to thank the people who supported our nomination and election. I've been in touch with the senator already this morning, talked with both the senator and his family. I wish especially to thank my family, some of whom are here with me, and my campaign staff, and particularly to thank Mrs. Humphrey, who was the secret weapon in this campaign. And as I said to some of you last night, to thank each and every one of you. I intend to continue my dedication to public service and to the building of a responsive and vital Democratic Party. I shall continue my personal commitment to the cause of human rights, of peace, and to the betterment of man. If I have helped in this campaign to move these causes forward, I feel rewarded. I have done my best. I have lost. Mr. Nixon has won. The democratic process has worked its will. So now let's get on with the urgent task of uniting our country. Thank you.
Before the Vice President arrived that he would not care to answer any questions. So no questions will be put to him at this time.
It's been a lot of hard work. I don't want anybody to have any extra sympathy. As a matter of fact, what I'd like to have you do is just redouble your efforts to do what you thought you were doing and what I thought I was doing. Maybe we can make an even greater contribution to the things that are important in this country. I really don't feel very badly. I actually feel that we've done a heck of a job. I want you to think we'll continue the campaign right away, but I just thought you ought to know you maybe ought to have a little rest. We intend to take some. We're not quite sure just what we're going to do with the next few days. We're going to stay out here in Minnesota. I haven't mowed the lawn for some time, and there still is a few things to do out at our place. As a matter of fact, I feel a great sense of both release and relief. And I hope and pray that all of you will feel the same way. I want you to be of good cheer. I'd like to have you feel a little happy. It's not easy, but quite frankly, this was an uphill fight all the way. I was the first one to know it, and I think the last one on the line of my staff that recognized it. I never had any doubt but whether it would be a close fight. Come see, come saw, you know, one way, one, it bounced a little one way, bounced a little another. We've got a president-elect. He's going to have my help. Cheers.
George Wallace carried 5 states: Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Louisiana, and Mississippi. He ran strongly in only 4 others: North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee, finishing second in all 3, and Florida, where he was a strong 3rd. Wallace talked about the campaign and his future plans at a news conference today in Montgomery. Here is a report from contributing editor Douglas Kiker.
George Wallace and his running mate, General Curtis LeMay, held a news conference this afternoon here in Montgomery. Both men were in a good mood. Both obviously were happy to have the whole thing over with. And both of them claimed that they did what they set out to do. That is, give conservatives a measure of influence in this election.
I want to emphasize that in our judgment, our movement has been successful. And I think that most of you probably thought a year ago that we not only wouldn't get on the 50 ballots in the country, but had someone asked you, would this ticket get 10 million votes for the presidency a year ago, I think most of you would answer in the negative. But we did get that many votes, and it was very significant that we got on all ballots in all 50 states. And I do say that we, in our judgment, the people who supported us had an impact on orienting the 2 parties in a different direction. And I do wish for Mr. Nixon the most success of any president in the history of our country. And I sincerely hope that he can unify the people of our nation, and that the problems that government ought to solve can be solved by him as the chief executive of our country, because I'm an American and I want his administration to be highly successful.
I think probably I'm the most happiest man in the world, or at least in this room right now, because I think I've accomplished practically all the goals that I had in mind when I agreed to join Governor Wallace in his campaign. I suppose there might have been a little frosting on the cake if the election had wound up in a tie and we could have had a little influence on the solution of the problem, which I think we could solve very quickly. But that's probably a selfish thought. I think it's probably better for the country that Mr. Nixon did win outright in his own regard. And, of course, I hope that he goes ahead and pulls the country together and does the things that have to be done to really get us going at full speed. And I believe he will do that.
Governor, what happens now to you and to the American Independent Party? Specifically, are you going to run for president in 1972?
Well, of course, that's a long way off, Douglas. And we're going to continue to be interested in the affairs of our country and events that transpire between now and 72 will, of course, determine that.
Governor, more specific about what you plan for the future, Governor. You said you practice law.
Well, I have no plans for the future politically, if that's what you have in mind, Nelson. No plans politically at the moment at all.
Are you talking on a national or a state level?
I'm talking about on the national level. I've said in the past that I have no plans for state politics at all.
Wallace didn't have the strength he thought he had. He thought he would get considerably more of the total popular vote than he got. He was hoping to carry some of the border states outside the Deep South and thus broaden his political power base. And those big wild rallies in Chicago and Detroit and New York City persuaded him that he might even show some muscle up north. That didn't happen, but this doesn't mean that Wallace's drive for national political power is over and done with. George Wallace's time didn't come in 1968, but he still believes his time will come. Douglas Kiker, NBC News, Montgomery, Alabama.
Senator Muskie wired congratulations to Vice President-elect Agnew, then played a round of golf. Agnew told a news conference he accepted his election with humility and a spirit of hope. He predicted that when the absentee ballot is counted, he and Nixon will carry his home state of Maryland. Fourth party candidate Dick Gregory announced he will set himself up in Washington as a president in exile for Americans who feel the official government doesn't represent them. He said he'll paint his headquarters black. Following custom, most foreign governments refrained from official comment on the election, although many said congratulations to Nixon. Communist China was an exception, saying the election won't change American aggression and imperialism. French sources said that the Gaulle government views the election as a good omen for improved relations between France and the United States.
With quite a good margin. And in the state of Iowa, and this is about the closest race we've had, Governor Harold Hughes, a third-term governor in Iowa, defeated state legislator David Stanley. As you may remember, Governor Hughes nominated Eugene McCarthy at Chicago. The Democrats thus have retained their control of the Senate. It was never in doubt. It used to be by a 63-37 ratio, but with a net gain that we have of 5 seats, the present ratio, if all things hold, would appear to be 58-42. Now, the following Democrats who are opposed to the president's policy on Vietnam retained their seats despite dire predictions they might lose them. Senator Abraham Ribicoff in Connecticut defended his seat against former Congressman Ed May. McGovern in South Dakota defended his seat against Archie Gubrud. Frank Church in Idaho retained his seat, and Senator J. William Fulbright, the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee and an early opponent of the war, retained his seat in Arkansas. One Senate candidate, not an incumbent, who opposed the administration's policy on Vietnam, fought for a minority plank in Chicago, was former Congressman John Gilligan of Cincinnati, Ohio. He beat Democratic incumbent Frank Lausche in the Democratic primary this spring, but last night he was beaten by State Attorney General William Saxby. The decision was not final until the early hours this morning when Gilligan made this poignant statement to his supporters in Cincinnati.
To all of the wonderful people who gave so unselfishly of their energies, their talents, I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. To all of the thousands of students and young people who have been so magnificent and who today are disappointed, I confess that I'm disappointed too. Your consolation and mine must be that we have fought the good fight and we kept the faith. We've not yet finished the course. After a vigorous campaign, the people have spoken, their verdict is in, and we will abide by it. Because we believe in democracy, and we have faith in the ultimate wisdom of an informed electorate. I have no regrets. I have said what I believe, and I believe what I have said. The people are entitled to know less.
Now for the story on the House races, here is Edwin Newman.
As far as the House races go, it was hardly worth the country's while to go through the trouble. Very few seats changed hands. The Republicans made a net gain of 4, and the new House will be essentially the same as the outgoing one. The Republicans had expected to make substantial gains and maybe even pick up the 30 seats they would have needed to control the House. They never came close. The Democratic majority will be 51. The fact that the change is so small is not necessarily a vote of confidence in the House we have now. It reflects two things. First, there was no big national movement to either party. And second, the Democrats usually dominate the House, and Richard Nixon did not run well enough to shake that. George Wallace may have contributed to this by draining away attention from the Republicans in the South. All the leading figures in the House are to come back, but Frances Bolton, the 83-year-old Republican congresswoman from Ohio, was defeated. The Democratic member from Harlem, Adam Clayton Powell, who was expelled last year, then re-elected but not seated, has been elected once more. For the first time, the House will have a black woman member, Shirley Chisholm, from the sometimes explosive Bedford-Stuyvesant area of Brooklyn.
Nixon carried these states: Arizona, California, Colorado, Delaware, Florida, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. Vice President Humphrey carried these states: Connecticut, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Washington, and West Virginia. He also carried the District of Columbia. NBC News has not yet projected a winner for Alaska, nor Missouri, nor Texas.
Sandy, Vanover, Ed Newman, I thought it was interesting to note Nixon said the sign he saw during the campaign that touched him most was one somebody held up in, I've forgotten what town, saying, "Bring us together." It seemed to me, and I wonder if it does to you, that the most immediate need in this country is something like that, rather than a lot of fancy new legislation out of Congress, because if the country is not brought together, it's not going to last. What do you think?
I agree.
Sandy?
I agree with you, David. We've had a lot of legislation in Washington in the last 5 years. It was needed legislation. It had been bottled up for about 20 years. It was the unfinished business of the New Deal. But now it needs refinement. People don't like the big, massive federal programs. And what they need is something that I can only call the politics of soul politics. They do want to feel uplifted somehow. And I think that may be more essential right now than any kind of new legislation. They desperately feel, especially after this year that we've all gone through, the need for binding up the wounds. For the president, not so much for what he does in the Congress, but for what he is as a human being.
Ed?
Well, I agree also, David. I think a couple of things worth pointing out. I've done a little figuring on the popular vote, and it looks to me as though it's going to run about 73 million, which is really not nearly so many as had been anticipated, not so many as had been hoped, which suggests that a good many people stayed away. The second thing is, of course, that it's an extremely close election, and it cannot be interpreted as any kind of resounding vote of confidence in Nixon. What the country is really telling Nixon, it seems to me, is we'll tolerate you, but we're not enthusiastic about you. And whether he can bring the country together in these circumstances, I don't know. I don't know whether anybody could in any circumstances because of everything that's happened. But that the need is there is plain, and judging by what he said, he certainly recognizes it. But the election itself, I think, has not been a healing thing. Maybe he can turn it into one.
Well, of course, Richard Nixon is a plurality and not a majority president. However, It seems to me he has a tremendous opportunity here, and if he lucks out a bit and handles it well, his popularity rating could be far greater than this word plurality suggests, because the country has indicated that it wants to be headed in a new direction. I think we're probably a little vague as to what that direction is, and maybe the country itself is a little bit vague about it, but Sanders suggested it. Maybe the end of big government programs. Maybe we need just some new equipment and new machinery to handle some old programs. But Nixon has a great opportunity here.
Chet, you know, every president has this period of grace, what I think the poet Wordsworth called the willing suspension of disbelief. People are ready to believe anything. And I think what Mr. Nixon has to do very quickly is to move to settle the Vietnam War, because as long as this cancer continues to infect the body politic of this country, he can't really get on with the unfinished agenda of the American democracy. And it'll be interesting to see how he moves, though he doesn't have responsibility for the peace talks in Paris, how he moves very quickly to ingratiate himself into the formula for solving this conflict.
Well, he does, as you say, have what is commonly called the honeymoon, a chance to do some things before his enemies gather and turn against him. I suspect that the Nixon years will be not terribly unlike the Eisenhower years, though of course he doesn't have the advantage of being a great national hero that Eisenhower was. He probably is the most popular president in our lifetime. Probably could be elected again if he were younger and healthier and it were legal. So I would guess it would be somewhat like that. Not a time of great social turmoil, of legislative turmoil, innovation, new ideas. I suspect we'll see very few, and maybe some attention to some old ones.
David, there is a somewhat uncomfortable point that I think has to be made, which is that Nixon is not entirely trusted by large segments of the American population. It doesn't matter that he's been elected. That continues to be the case. And that's going to complicate, make more difficult the task he has of unifying the nation. It's going to be terribly, terribly difficult, and the very narrow division in the election will not help.
Without the participation of the legal government of the Republic of Vietnam, it is possible for us to discuss some procedural matters surrounding the meeting and rules of the game and so on. We would, even in that case, want to consult with the South Vietnamese. Beyond that, I just wouldn't want to go in speculating about what might or might not happen or what might or might not be discussed.
Is it possible that you might have a meeting with the North Vietnamese, excluding the FNL, in order to settle these procedural problems for you?
We have been meeting with the North Vietnamese.
Where do these meetings take place?
I'm not at liberty to say. As you know, from the outset of these talks, we have felt that some kind of private meeting offers a better opportunity for making progress than meetings that are held in the full glare of publicity. And we would like to preserve that because our principal interest in these talks is making progress. So I'd just as soon not go into where they're meeting or under what circumstances.
The Viet Cong today blew up part of a strategic bridge northeast of Saigon. The battleship New Jersey fired at targets near the coast 100 miles east of the capital, and American airmen flew 649 sorties in South Vietnam. The bombing halt in the north now permits the Americans to concentrate their air activity in South Vietnam. But to pilots accustomed to bombing the north, it has brought on new problems. NBC News correspondent Andy Guthrie reports.
There have been some operational changes at Da Nang's Marine Air Base because of President Johnson's bombing halt over North Vietnam. These A-6 intruders, mainly used for bombing the north, are getting a brief rest. The first complete stand-down for this squadron in 2 years. Later, they'll be bombing Viet Cong positions in South Vietnam. With only reconnaissance planes flying north these days, the main air emphasis has shifted to close fighter support for American ground troops. Since the halt, the bomb loads are different. the so-called hard ordnance or heavy bombs replaced with soft ordnance, rockets, napalm, wing cannon, anti-personnel bombs. The pilots are emotionally involved now with every flight. In northern missions, accuracy is important. In the south, it is critical. The day before this film was taken, a Marine Phantom jet on a run near Anhua hit a U.S. position instead of the enemy with napalm. 6 Marines died, 8 were wounded. Andy Guthrie, NBC News, Da Nang Air Base, Vietnam.
Having observed a half-century of its own existence last week, Czechoslovakia is stubbornly determined not to celebrate the 51st anniversary of the Russian Revolution tomorrow. Today in Bratislava, thousands of students pulled down Soviet flags and burned them. In Prague, Czechoslovak troops and police sealed off a wide area around the National Theater to prevent anti-Soviet demonstrations during a performance of the Russian ballet. An authoritative Vatican magazine said today that while Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis has not been excommunicated from the church for marrying a divorced man, yet she is regarded as a public sinner. Cardinal Wyszynski of Poland arrived today at the Vatican. It was his first trip outside Poland since the government prohibited him from traveling 3 years ago. Charles Munch, conductor of the Paris Symphony, was found dead today, apparently of natural causes, in his hotel room in Richmond, Virginia. He was 77. 30 seamen are missing and feared dead following a fire on a Norwegian tanker last week. The hulk of the tanker is being towed to Newfoundland. Prices went up today on the New York Stock Exchange. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 3 1/5 points, and the value of an average share of common stock increased 10 cents. The volume was 12,640,000 shares. David?
1968 certainly has been one of the unhappiest years in American history. The politics has been rough, and the final result, learned only today, left about exactly half the country feeling it had lost and that the other half had won. And seldom, if ever, have so many people lost so much sleep to see their side lose. Well, here, for the last few minutes of this program, here's something nice, really nice. It is non-political, it is clean, it is honest, it is beautiful, and it was, in a sense, created in 1968. The Congress, now about to leave office, voted this year to create a number of new national parks and national scenic rivers. The President asked for them, Congress agreed, both parties, and they are now there, safe from destruction, we hope forever, and they include parks and rivers in Washington, California, and elsewhere in the Northwest. So, again, here is something really nice, clean, and beautiful, and in 1968, all of us together came to own it, to keep forever. Good night, Chet.
Good night, David. And good night for NBC News.